Welcome back to Sunday School, everyone. I'm Jared Anderson, and this is Engaging Gospel Doctrine, episode 344, which covers the Come Follow Me material for August 25th and September 1st, Love is the Answer. This is New Testament weeks 34 and 35. So on Sunday, we had assigned 1 Corinthians 1 through 7, and this Sunday we have assigned 1 Corinthians 8 to 13. My United Nations presentation was a bit anticlimactic. There were like 10 people there, but networking was amazing as these things go, and I'm very relieved to be on the other side of that. Let's look at the schedule really quick. I'm going to push really hard so that I'm even about a month ahead, and I'll tell you how I'm going to do that. So we have Sunday School next on the 15th of September. On the 8th, we're reading 1 Corinthians 14 through 16. And for the 15th, 2 Corinthians 1 through 7. And then September 22nd, 2 Corinthians 8 through 13, the 29th, Galatians. And then we don't have Sunday School between the 15th, September 15th, and October 20th. Which is kind of crazy with these like fifth Sundays, and whenever General Conference hits, there's a really big gap. So October 6th is General Conference, then October 13th is Ephesians, and the 20th is Philippians and Colossians. So I will push through to get to that point as fast as I can. But for now, I'm very glad to be getting this episode out. It's really important. This is the love episode, the love reading. So as I said, the theme really is love is the answer. I want to start out by reading a summary of the four loves by C.S. Lewis. So he talks about affection, friendship, romantic, and charity. And I will read, again, a summary from cslewis.com. Affection, storge. Affection covers an array of loves. Like animals, the care of mother to babe is a picture of affection. It relies on the expected and the familiar. Lewis describes it as humble. Affection almost slinks or seeps through our lives, he says. It lives with humble, undressed, private things, soft slippers, old clothes, old jokes, the thump of a sleepy dog's tail on the kitchen floor, the sound of a sewing machine. Affection can sit alongside other loves, and often does. For example, when a man and woman fall in love, it is often because of certain affections, a particular location, experience, personality, interest, that begin to wrap around the couple so to make love an expected and familiar part of their shared lives. It is the familiarity of the people with whom you are thrown together in the family, the college, the mess, the ship, the religious house, says Lewis. The affection for the people always around us in the normal day-to-day of life is the majority of love we experience, even if we don't label it. So that was affection, storge. Friendship, philia. Friendship is the love dismissed. To the ancients, friendship seemed the happiest and most fully human of all loves, says Lewis. The crown of life in the school of virtue. The modern world, in comparison, ignores it. Why? Perhaps we know it's the most time-consuming, the least celebrated, the one we could live without. Perhaps, too, as Lewis says, few value it because few experience it. Romance lends itself to conception, affection enables us to have a sense of place and belonging, and charity provides a track to redemption. But friendship doesn't provide the same level of productivity if we want to state it in a consumer mindset. However, Lewis thinks friendship likely has closest resemblance to heaven, where we will be intertwined in our relationships. We develop a kinship over something in common, and that longing for camaraderie makes friendship all the more wanted. Friendship must be about something, Lewis says, even if it were only an enthusiasm for dominoes or white mice. Those who have nothing can share nothing. Those who are going nowhere can have no fellow travelers. Think about it, too. Friendships have begun faith movements, developed entire areas of thought, and contributed to many projects from art to business. Romantic, eros. Different than friendship, lovers are always talking to one another about their love and are normally face-to-face absorbed in each other, says Lewis. The danger in romantic love is to follow blindly after a feeling of passion. Then we celebrate the passion and think its absence means such love has died. Certainly, true romance is not so fickle. Though the feeling is useful, the event of falling in love is of such a nature that we are right to reject as intolerable the idea that it should be transitory, says Lewis. In one high bound, it has overleaped the massive wall of our selfhood. It has made appetite itself altruistic, tossed personal happiness aside as a triviality, and planted the interests of another in the center of our being. Spontaneously and without effort, we have fulfilled the law towards one person by loving our neighbor as ourselves. It is an image, a foretaste of what we must become to all if love himself rules in us without rival. There's a reason Scripture teaches this bond that of man and woman from Genesis onward is the picture of God's love for the world, Christ for his bride, the church. When we discover afresh that romance is more deeply set than the drivel served up by our culture, then we will more rightly hold our spouse in the model of unconditional love. One of the favorite things I've learned from the book Attached is, and I agree with C.S. Lewis, that romantic love in its intensity and devotion is a really important map and pointer and shadow of divine, mystical, transcendent love. Biologically, when partners love each other, their nervous systems regulate each other, which is amazing. And that's why heartbreak hurts so much, because our emotional systems piggyback onto our physical nervous systems. And so we can die of heartbreak. But the cool thing is that when we are in love with someone, especially when we're partnered with someone, our nervous systems literally moderate each other. And that's one reason why a healthy relationship is such a powerful impact toward health, and an unhealthy relationship can be so catastrophic. Charity, agape. This is our chief aim, the unconditional love of the Father given to us through his Son. Affection, friendship, and romantic love are each the training ground for charity to grow. It's also a rival to the three. Lewis mentions St. Augustine's deep loss of a friend who says that such desolation is what occurs when we give our heart to anything but God. All human beings pass away, says Lewis. Don't put your goods in a leaky vessel. Don't spend too much on a house you may be turned out of. Yet we are made to love, and we are in want of it. If we play it safe, we are not living out the gospel, but burying the coin in the safe ground, as the parable says. Lewis reminds us, there is no safe investment. To love at all is to be vulnerable. Love anything, and your heart will certainly be wrung and possibly be broken. If you want to make sure of keeping it intact, you must give your heart to no one, not even to an animal. Wrap it carefully round with hobbies and little luxuries. Avoid all entanglements. Lock it up safe in the casket or coffin of your selfishness. But in that casket, safe, dark, motionless, airless, it will change. It will not be broken. It will become unbreakable, impenetrable, irredeemable. The alternative to tragedy, or at least to the risk of tragedy, is damnation. The only place outside heaven where you can be perfectly safe from all the dangers and perturbations of love is hell. As a reminder, as we discussed, in John 21, Jesus asks Peter if he loves him, using the word that Paul uses, agape, and Peter responds twice that yes, he likes or is fond of him, philia. And then the third time Jesus meets him and says, "Are you fond of me?" And then Peter realizes that he has fallen short of the target. Let's first and foremost dig into agape. This selfless, caring love that is talked about in the Book of Mormon. And again, it is this Christian love. So agape is selfless love that wants what is best for self and others, independent of ego or comparison. So this is charity. This is that pure, clean, flowing love that wants what's best instead of like grasping, selfish, conditional love. I want to do a careful reading and analysis of 1 Corinthians 13. This hopefully will, I've been working on this since about 6:30 this morning. I joked, but I'm serious that this hopefully will earn your, monthly donation. So Paul has been speaking about spiritual gifts and now uses one gift or concept to put everything in perspective. This is the dictionary to have. It's called a Greek lexicon of the New Testament and other early Christian literature. You can get it used for about 30. It goes for about 80. And it is fantastic. Like, it has every single word in the New Testament and in early Christian writing. It has references. It has ranges of meaning. And if you just teach yourself the Greek alphabet, you can use Bible Hub you can just look up any particular chapter in Greek, and then you can find it, look it up, and have a pretty good sense of the meaning. So these verses in Greek are he agape makrothumai Christeotai he agape u dale he agape u perpetuatai u fusiustai uk aschenomai udzete tahotes u paroxunetai u lodzdetai ta kakon u chaire epi te adikia sun chare de te aletheia Pante stege, panta pistewe, panta elpizde, panta hupomene. Pardon my reading of Greek. Let's dig really deeply into this. So I'm going to use the KJV and then read Wayment's translation, which is great. So charity, agape, suffereth long, makrothumai. This makes me think of my hurt well principle. It refers to emotional endurance, which is one of the most essential skills in life. This is being self-controlled in the face of provocation. So being patient, being forbearing, being tolerant, being able to hold our feelings and not act on them. It is seriously it's emotional discipline, fortitude. It is seriously one of the most important things. I have been very actively cultivating that over the past several years after being very up and down, very heartbroken, very excited. I have bipolar in my genetics, but I really pride myself on the fact that I now have this groundedness and patience and fortitude more than I ever imagined I could. Kind, chrestoetai, treating people well seems to be the core of this word, the root being to use and something being easy. There's a book, Passionate Marriage, by David Schnarch, and his advice is that our job is to become the easiest version of ourselves, and only then can we expect people to deal with the remainder. Next, charity envieth not, ou zeloi. This is to have intense negative feelings over another's achievement or success, but zeloi is also zealous, and it means to be positively interested in something or strive. One of the attributes that makes me the most happy and well is I genuinely celebrate excellence without comparison. I am happy when anyone is doing well, when anyone is enjoying a relationship or love, when anyone is thriving, when anyone is successful, when anyone is excellent, even if I am in a relationship of competition with them. So if I apply for a job and someone else gets it, on my better days, and it goes pretty deep, like I'm genuinely happy for them. Okay. Vaunteth not itself, ou peperuetai. Puffed up is a really good one. Or no, that's the next one. Being a braggart, being a windbag. This is someone who heaps up praise on themselves. I like to differentiate celebrating yourself, which is something that I do. And I think all of us need that a lot more. Like all of us should celebrate ourselves, be excited about the things you're good at. Be excited about the things that are going well for you. That's different than like needing to heap praise on yourself. Again, being needy in that way. Is not puffed up. Fusiotai. This is to blow up or inflate. It's the medical term for swollen. So this is you have an exaggerated self-conception. You're full of hot air. Does not behave itself unseemly. Ou aschemone. This is to act contrary to social standards. This is related to schema. So proprietary or being appropriate. So that would be a good translation of it. Like charity is appropriate for the context. Let's see. Seeketh not her own. Uzete tahotes is just what it says, does not seek what belongs to it. I think a good nuance would be for its own benefit. Charity is not seeking out its own benefit. Is not easily provoked. U parachunitai. Or no, it's paraxunatai. The root is to sharpen. And so charity does not provoke irritation or an escalated state. Charity does not work people up for the sake of working them up. Certainly applicable to social media. Thinketh no evil. Logizdetai takakan. I really like the Greek nuance of this. Charity does not keep an account of bad things, does not keep a stockpile of negatives to weaponize later. I think all of us have been in relationships like this where, everything we do, every limitation, every foible, every mistake, every shortcoming is stockpiled as ammunition for future fights. And charity does not do this. Rejoiceth not in iniquity. U haire epi te adakia. This is an interesting tension with words. Chairo means to rejoice, take pleasure, and be glad. So don't be glad and rejoice in things contrary to the principles of wellness. Don't rejoice in things that aren't joyful and joy-worthy. Rejoiceth in the truth. Sun haire de te aletheia. I really like the addition of sun, which means with. So rejoice with that is what's true. Be on team truth. Love what is one of my current practices. And then we have these boom, 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 all things. Beareth all things. Panta stege. This relates to the word for roof, and it kind of has an allusion to a protective enclosure. I really love the idea and this nuance to bear up against difficulties. So this is the idea of staying firm and strong and protected to protect ourselves and others. Believeth all things, panta pistewe. This is the faith word. So love believes in, trusts, has confidence in, invests in, that which is true and good. Implied, obviously we don't need to believe all things because then we'd be overly credulous and gullible. Hopeth all things. Panta elpisde, to look forward to something with confidence. And then endureth all things. Panta hupomene. Hupomene means to stay in a place beyond the expected amount of time, linger, remain. And so love stands one's ground and endures. We are able to remain where we should be, even when we have pressure against us, even when things try to make us move. So this is fortitude. Again, I love the nuances. And so I included all those in my notes so you can take a look at them. Wayment's translation is very succinct and enjoyable. Charity is patient. Charity is kind. It is not jealous, nor does it boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It is not self-serving. It is not resentful or spiteful. It does not rejoice in unrighteousness, but it rejoices in truth. Charity bears all things, believeth all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. So again, really good stuff. The way that 1 Corinthians is organized, we really focused on 1 Corinthians 13, which is the pinnacle culmination of everything, because the rest of the letter is Paul addressing the concerns that the Corinthian saints have had. So I want to talk about Corinthian problems and how love solves them. So in chapter 1, Paul talks about rivalries, comparisons of status, conversion pedigree. He talks about people saying, well, I was baptized by Apollos, or, I was baptized by Paul, or I was baptized by someone that you don't even recognize. And he was saying, stop it. This is not what's important. You are all baptized into Christ. Don't be comparative. And so you can see how this would address it. Don't puff yourself up. Number 2, people are boasting in wisdom and learning. He's talking about not boasting in wisdom and learning, which means, again, implied that was a concern. 3 and 4, more competition of status and pedigree. Chapter 5, someone married his stepmother, and there are immoral associations, including visiting prostitutes, or maybe that's later in the chapter. But again, if we have this real, genuine, healthy love, we won't do things like that. Chapter 6, Christians are taking each other to court and suing each other. 7, we have questions about sex, marriage, and the lack thereof. So one of the things that surprises a lot of people is celibacy was quite common in early Christianity. And this is because the early Christians believed that Jesus was coming back to radically overthrow the social order quite soon. The early Joseph Smith and the other leaders of the church also believed that. So basically for 2,000 years, people have believed that Jesus was going to come back and fix the world. Of course, in Jesus' own ministry and life, God was the one to come back, to come and overthrow all injustice. The kingdom of God has come near. And so it was a time of not yet. And so Paul encourages everyone in his letters to stay as you are. If you are single, stay single. If you are married, stay married, because God is coming back and fixing everything next week. Now, that of course didn't happen, but Paul says, be aware of your limitations. I personally think that Paul was divorced, and I wonder, it would be highly unlikely for a Jew of his status to not be married. Similar to Jesus, I think Jesus was also married. And I wouldn't be surprised if when Paul converted, his wife left him. So that's an interesting thing just to think about. But he says, don't go to the extreme to say it's good not to have sex. It's good not to be married. Yes, it's helpful to focus on the urgent needs of the gospel. But if you have to, get married and that's your thing, follow that path. In chapter 8, he brings up food sacrificed to idols. And the issue here is that the more educated members of the community understood that the pagan gods didn't really exist, and therefore there was nothing wrong by buying the discount Zeus steak. But the lower status, or like the less educated members, probably were still superstitious. And they probably still they believed in worship Jesus, but they probably were like, oh, and also Zeus and Athena are also real. And so Paul says, if you are loving, don't cause your brother or sister to stumble. It's more important that you have a good relationship with your brothers and sisters than that you eat the discount Zeus steak. 9, should religious leaders be financially supported? Again, be loving, be supportive. 10, idolatry and temptation. 11, we have worship issues. Paul really struggles what to do with women not being veiled during worship. And you really have to understand Greco-Roman society to understand this problem. So one of the most interesting things about the Christian community is it blurred public and private space. Greco-Roman culture is very much about order, very much about status, very much about hierarchy. And so men were in charge in the public sphere and women were in charge in the private sphere. And most often women were veiled in public and they were not veiled in private. But the issue was that the earliest Christian communities met in people's homes. And also there was this radical idea that with the inbreaking of the kingdom, there is no more male and female, bond or free, master or slave, and so forth. And so people were navigating this. And that's why you get some teachings at tension. On balance, Paul was pretty radically egalitarian. He very clearly supports women speaking in church, being leaders in church. We'll talk more about that later. And another problem is that the rich who don't need to work as long are showing up to the Lord's Supper, which was a full meal, and eating all the bread and wine and not leaving any for the poor who needed it more and they're hungry. And so again, Paul says, love, 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 love. And then in 12, there was a problem of comparison or pride about spiritual gifts. And this is like a charismatic thing. He's going to come back to it in 2 Corinthians. So this is where he's saying, all of us need each other. A few highlights: all things to all people, as you know, is one of my very favorite scriptures. And me being a chaplain, it's especially important. I want to meet people where they are as much as I can. So my rules are, I have integrity as to my own beliefs and background, of course, and I have respect for the religion which I'm serving. So for example, I think I've mentioned when I have Catholic patients die, obviously I can't give last rites, not being Catholic. And so I will coordinate a priest to come and I will say, can I read some prayers with you while we are waiting for the priest to arrive? 9:5 mentions that the apostles are married, which is really neat. Chapter 10, no temptation that is not common to humanity has seized you. God is faithful and he will not permit you to be tempted beyond your ability. But with the trial, he will also provide a way out so that you can endure it. I think that this is an important clarification beyond the oversimplistic way we cite this. I don't think it's fair to say you'll never be tempted beyond what you can bear. The context says to be tempted is part of the human experience, and God will always provide a way out of that temptation. Now, that doesn't mean that we won't be overcome by that temptation. It's just that there will be a way out eventually. And I do believe that some people are so hurt, so traumatized, so addicted, so limited that there is no functional way out. And that's why we need to, not judge, be compassionate, have grace. Okay, love and the body of Christ. I've talked before about how I just love this idea that we are the bodies of Christ. We all have our different role, our different strengths, our different weaknesses. And so I hope that we can all love everyone for what they are, delight in and celebrate everyone without comparison or defensiveness. My definition of humility is that we are honest. We make ourselves no more and no less than we are. So for example, I am a genius level communicator and I'm matter of fact about that. I'm grateful for it. It's really enjoyable. But I don't need to make a big deal out of it. It would be false humility for me to say, oh no, I'm not that good with words. Aw shucks. Number 2, no need to compare. So when I meet other brilliant wordsmiths, I love it. I love it when people are as good at or better than I am with words. And then number 3, able to accept correction and feedback graciously. So there's a difference between being something and needing to be something. And if we need to be something, it will always backfire. It will be infected. Whereas if we can just joyfully, gratefully celebrate what we are and what our roles happen to be, that's fantastic. Okay. In conclusion, I just want to read a few things by David White from the book Consolations. It's one of my all-time favorite books. It's meditations on these different words, and he has a couple that relate to agape. I'm going to read a selection from Unrequited, Heartbreak, and Friendship. Unrequited. Unrequited love is the love most human beings experience most of the time. The very need to be fully requited may be to turn from the possibilities of love itself. Men and women have always had difficulty with the way a love returned hardly ever resembles a love given, but unrequited love may be the form love mostly takes. For what affection is ever returned over time in the same measure or quality with which it is given? Every man or woman loves differently and uniquely, and each of us holds different dreams and hopes and falls in love or is the object of love at a very specific threshold in a very particular life where very, very particular qualities are needed for the next few years of our existence. What other human being could ever love us as we need to be loved? And whom could we know so well and so intimately through all the twists and turns of a given life that we show them exactly the continuous and appropriate form of, or affection they need? Requited love may happen, but it is a beautiful, temporary, seasonal blessing, the aligning of stars not too often in the same quarter of the heavens, an astonishing blessing. But it is a harvest coming only once every long cycle, and a burden to the mind and the imagination when we set that dynamic as the state to which we must always return in order to feel ourselves in a true, consistent, loving relationship. Whether our affections are caught in romantic love, trying to see our neighbors as ourselves, or trying to love a great but distant God, our love rarely seems to be returned in the mode that it is given. That gift is returned in ways that, to begin with, we rarely recognize. Human beings live in disappointment and a self-appointed imprisonment when they refuse to love unless they are loved the self-same way in return. It is the burden of marriage, the difficult invitation at the heart of parenting, and the central difficulty in our relationship with an imagined living God. The great discipline seems to be to give up wanting to control the manner in which we are requited, and forego the natural disappointment that flows from expecting an exact and measured reciprocation from a partner, from a child, from a loving God. We seem to have been born into a world where love, except for brilliant, exceptional moments, often seems to exist from one side only, ours. And that may be the difficulty and the revelation and the gift, to see love as the ultimate letting go, and through the doorway of that affection, make the most difficult sacrifice of all, giving away the very thing we want to hold forever. And that flows to the next concept, heartbreak. Heartbreak is inevitable, the natural outcome of caring for people and things over which we have no control, of holding in our affections those who inevitably move beyond our line of sight. Even the longest, strongest marriage has had its heart broken many times just in the act of staying together over the years. Heartbreak begins the moment we are asked to let go but cannot. In other words, it colors and inhabits and magnifies each and every day. Heartbreak is not a visitation but a path that human beings follow through even the most average life. Heartbreak is an indication of our sincerity in a love relationship, in a life's work, and trying to learn a musical instrument in the attempt to shape a better, more generous self. Heartbreak is the beautifully helpless side of love and affection, and is just as much an essence and emblem of care as the spiritual athlete's quick but abstract ability to let go. Heartbreak has its own way of inhabiting time and its own beautiful and trying patience in coming and going. Heartbreak is how we mature, yet we use the word heartbreak as if it occurs when things have gone wrong, an unrequited love, a shattered dream, a child lost before their time. Heartbreak, we hope, is something we hope we can avoid, something to guard against, a chasm to be carefully looked for and then walked around. The hope is to find a way to place our feet where the elemental forces of life will keep us in the manner to which we want to be accustomed, and to which will keep us from the losses that all other human beings have experienced, without exception, since the beginning of conscious time. But heartbreak may be the very essence of being human, of being on the journey from here to there, and of coming to care deeply for what we find along the way. If heartbreak is inevitable and inescapable, it might be asking us to look for it and make friends with it, to see it as our constant and instructive companion, and even perhaps in the depth of its impact as well as in its hindsight, to see it as its own reward. Heartbreak asks us not to look for an alternative path because there is no alternative path. It is a deeper introduction to what we love and have loved, an inescapable and often beautiful question, something or someone who has been with us all along, asking us to be ready to let go of the way we are holding everything and everyone that comes our way, and preparation perhaps for the last letting go of all. And finally, friendship. Friendship is a mirror to presence and a testament to forgiveness. Friendship not only helps us see ourselves through another's eyes, but can be sustained over the years only with someone who has repeatedly forgiven us for our trespasses, as we must find it in ourselves to forgive them in turn. A friend knows our difficulties and shadows and remains in sight, a companion to our vulnerabilities more than our triumphs. When we are under this strange illusion, we do not need them. An undercurrent of real friendship is a blessing exactly because its elemental form is rediscovered again and again through understanding and mercy. All friendships of any length are based on a continued mutual forgiveness. Without tolerance and mercy, all friendships die. In the course of the years, a close friendship will always reveal the shadow in the other as much as ourselves. To remain friends, we must know the other and their difficulties and even their sins, and encourage the best in them, not through critique, but through addressing the better part of them, the leading creative edge of their incarnation, thus subtly discouraging what makes them smaller, less generous, less of themselves. Through the eyes of real friendship, an individual is larger than their everyday actions, and through the eyes of another we receive a greater sense of our own personhood, one we can aspire to, the one in whom they have the most faith. Friendship is a moving frontier of understanding, not only of the self and the other, but also of a possible and as yet unlived future. But no matter the medicinal virtues of being a true friend, of sustaining a long, close relationship with another, the ultimate touchstone of friendship is not improvement, neither of the other nor of the self. The ultimate touchstone is witness. The privilege of having been seen by someone and the equal privilege of being granted the sight of the essence of another, to have walked with them and to have believed in them, and sometimes just to have accompanied them for however brief a span on a journey impossible to accomplish alone. I think those are a really beautiful companion to this lesson and exploration of love, of charity, of agape, but also of the other kinds of love. So in conclusion, truly love is the greatest and in some ways the only necessary commandment. We have to love God. And as much as we understand about the nature of God, God is greater than we can understand. God is greater than our understanding. God is our source. God is mystery. God is what is. We have to love ourselves. Love has to start here. We have to love ourselves as we are with compassionate acceptance. And then finally, loving our neighbor. We have to show and practice love for those around us. So again, in summary, love means to take each person seriously as a divine, singular, free being. We have to treat people as people, including ourselves as a person. One thing that has really struck me is one of the most terrifying, courageous leaps is to make a target. I've said before, my life philosophy is right relationship, right target, right order, right work. And the right target has to be well-being. And it is so difficult to make a target of well-being rather than persistence. We cling to relationships as they are. We cling to people as they are. We make idolatry of ourselves, of each other, of relationships. And I do think that relationships can persist through life. In fact, I think nothing is more beautiful than a lifelong partnership. But the perfect relationship is one that is invincible by being infinitely breakable. I've talked about that before. If we live in such a way where we are dedicated to choosing right and choosing wellness at any other cost, we will stay together and stay together and stay together and stay together because we choose that and we are well together rather than the codependent fear. So again, I hope that we can all choose love, choose courageous love, and cultivate agape. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Engaging Gospel Doctrine. Thank you so much for all of those who are supporting the podcast and keeping it possible. I'm going to push forward and keep this as high quality as possible, and I'm excited to get this episode out. Thank you.